Okay, now, first, let's do the setting that indicates what a fool, a boob, and an idiot I am. I can't think of one. Perfect example of how I have no IQ. With that, wonder why? Ask how. Howard the Humongous! All right, look, boys and girls, this is the United States of America. This is an exceptional country. There are many ways it's an exceptional country. I hate to say this because, I hate chauvinism as much as you do, and yet I'm an American chauvinist. But the fact is, one of the things that makes us unique is that two of the early statements in the Constitution make a clear proposal that you can base the legitimacy of a government on an informed populace, people who have a lot of information and are able to make decisions, people who can read. One is the freedom of speech. The other is the freedom of the press. So our government can only go as far as our brains, your brain and mine, can go, and our brains operate on fuel just like an SUV does. But the fuel we operate on is information, knowledge. Now, we won't go into the fact that Edward Snowden and Bradley Manning showed us just how much knowledge our government is currently trying to deny us when Bradley Manning was slapped in irons for releasing 700,000 pieces of information you and I were never supposed to know. And God knows how much Edward Snowden released. But it's the obligation of our press, which fortunately did release a lot of that Bradley Manning and Edward Snowden information, to tell us the things we need to know to make decisions. Well, roughly 2 weeks ago, working on your behalf, I did some research. I knew that medical expenses have been going up as a percentage of the gross domestic product in horrible, shattering, potentially America-destroying ways for many decades. And I discovered that, in fact, from 1960, when Eisenhower was leaving the presidency and John F. Kennedy was about to enter, until today, health expenses have gone up from 5.1% of the gross domestic product of the United States to 17.9%. In other words, they've nearly quadrupled as a percentage of gross domestic product. By the way, this is private industry, American-style healthcare. And I expected that this is some sort of endemic problem. This is some sort of systemic problem, that it had been something that neither Democrats or Republicans could do anything about, that it had gone up consistently whether you had a Democratic president or a Republican president. And when I looked at the figures, I was shocked. Under Republican presidents, and we've covered this in a previous Howard the Humongous, medical expenses as a percentage of GDP had skyrocketed. Under Ronald Reagan, they went up 40%. That's appalling. Under George Bush, the Jr., George W. Bush, they shot up 30%. That's ghastly. And this did ghastly things to the American economy. And the really weird thing is that under Democratic presidents, and believe me, even though I'm a registered Democrat, I am very skeptical of Democratic presidents. Very critical of Barack Obama, for example. Under Democratic presidents, instead of going like this, they go like this. They plateau. Under Bill Clinton for 8 years, medical expenses as a percentage of GDP plateaued. Under Barack Obama, who's been in office for roughly 5 years, they've plateaued. What the hell is going on here? Surely this is something the American public needs to know. Right now, there is a massive battle. It's Godzilla versus Mothra over two different approaches to medical care. One is, well, they're both Republican approaches. One is Obamacare, which is actually Romney Care in disguise. It's one Republican approach. And the other is some unnamed, unexpressed point of view coming from John Boehner, Ted Cruz, and the bozos. But the track record indicates that the approach of the bozos, whatever kind of unregulated medical care these guys are championing, could kill the American economy. In fact, if we keep going up at Republican rates, in 10 years, 28% of our gross domestic product will go into medical care, and you won't be able to afford to buy an American product of any kind because of the percentage, the amount of money you have to pay for that product just to pay for the health care of the workers. The Japanese, the Chinese, the folks in Bangladesh will beat us like hell because their expenses are lower, and in many cases, like the Japanese, they live longer because they have better medical care for less cost. You would think that in a battle of Mothra versus Godzilla, about two approaches to healthcare, let's call it the Boehner approach to healthcare, versus what's being called Obamacare, but is really Romney care, in this gargantuan battle that is so important that Republicans are willing to shut down the American government and renege on the American debt. A fact like this would be of vital importance. Well, remember, boys and girls, I'm a science nerd. I've spent my whole life in science. I started in theoretical physics and microbiology at the age of 10, and then I took a side trip to see what the real world was like, because that's what you have to understand if you really want to understand truth. And I founded the biggest PR firm in the music industry. You would think I know something about how to get things into the press. So I wrote this up as a pitch letter, and I sent it to people I know at the New York Times, the Washington Post, PBS NewsHour, and a variety of other outlets. This is vitally important to the biggest debate right now in America. Do you know how much response I got? Almost zero. One friend at PBS, who is very high placed, wrote back saying, "Howard, surely you know we are not allowed to cover," what was the term, politically biased issues like this. Okay, I got news for you. And I put out another story about, well, we won't go into the other story. The point is, if information this vital cannot get to you because it is too politically biased, and if you put it out, somebody in the Republican or Democratic Party would step on you like an ant, and you fail to have the courage that's required of a journalist to stand up anyway, if no journalist will stand up, if no journalist will stand up for truth, if they are all cowards, think of all the other things you need to know to make a decision that you have never and will never be told. This is Howard the Humongous speaking to you from the future. It is your fucking goddamn job and mine, because journalists aren't going to do it, to make. And this time, we're not going to end by showing you just what a twerking, twerping idiot I am.